back to the daily grind, and shout out to the full-time patrons. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
We've got some terrible news, full-time family. The UFC's middleweight champion Robert Whittaker is out at UFC 234 and will no longer be fighting Kelvin Gastelum for the title tonight in tonight's pay-per-view. Now, instead, we will have the co-main event promoted, which is one of the most popular fights on the card. I think everybody's really been talking about Anderson Silva versus Israel Adesanya. So, I mean, salute to those guys. I mean, this is actually, that's one of the bright sides out of this. This is a huge showcase, I believe, for Israel Adesanya, and the legend Anderson Silva gets the main event of pay-per-view sort of on the way out the door. So, I mean, that's the bright side of this, but the not so bright side of this is this card is actually absolute dog shit now. So I mean, the hardcore fans and some people who aren't going to be doing anything else tonight, you'll get to see some good fights because it's MMA, so it's always going to be a card usually full of good fights, but it's not going to be a lot of noteworthy names or guys you would say should probably be on a pay-per-view. Definitely not worth the money, you know. The co-main event is now Lando Venata versus Marcos Mariano. And salute to Lando Venata. He's had a lot of fight of the nights, and he could definitely probably be half of a main event of a fight night card. But a pay-per-view, I mean, even a big ESPN card or something like that, I don't know about this co-main event. And it's not because Lando's a great fighter. I've just never heard of his opponent, Marcos Mariano. Never heard of this guy. He might be taking this fight on short notice or something, and he's in the co-main event of a pay-per-view. I mean, if you look at the rest of the card, if you're not a hardcore fan, you don't know any of these guys. Any of them. So people are not buying this tonight. Nobody. There's not a title fight on the card. Even in the main event, people are just picking Israel Adesanya to just smash Anderson Silva. So unless Anderson Silva pulls off some crazy upset, he's then I don't know. I don't know how memorable this night's gonna be for the UFC. This is as far as the pay-per-view is concerned, this is a huge hit to the UFC. And what does it mean? We'll have to talk about that in the future. I think one of the things that this kind of means is the UFC is running thin on title fights, because usually they like to put 2 title fights on each pay-per-view, you know, to make more people buy it for 1 and for 2, just in case, like this, a fight falls off. This is MMA. This is the fight business. Guys get injured. All type of shit happens. We've seen it millions of times. Someone could literally slip on a fucking cord and a fight could be canceled. We've seen they had to give Darren Till a title fight over the interim champion because they wanted to book a second title fight whenever Valentina Shevchenko was going to be fighting Nico Montano. They didn't want Nico versus Valentina to be the only title fight on that card for this exact reason. This exact reason. And this must mean the UFC was really run thin because they weren't even able to force a second title fight on here like that. Whenever the UFC booked Tyron Woodley versus Darren Till, they kind of forced that together. That fight didn't make much sense at the time because Colby Covington was the interim champion, but they wanted a second title fight. They didn't have a second title fight for this card. So that, we'll see what that means for the UFC. We do have a UFC 235 coming up, which does have 2 title fights. It's got John Jones versus Anthony Smith, and Tyron Woodley's going to be facing Kamaru Usman. So for the rest of the year, they should be good, you know, but Khabib suspended, Conor suspended. We'll see how this goes, but this pay-per-view as of tonight, I mean, it's probably 1 fight away from being scrapped. You know, heaven forbid the MMA gods, you know, knock on wood, this doesn't happen. But if anything, if Israel Adesanya or Anderson Silva caught a cold and couldn't fight, this card would be over. You know, like this, literally, you could find free Bellator cards better than this card. 100%. So I'm not mad at anybody if they get their refund or if they're not buying this. You know, if you're a hardcore fan and want to support these fighters, go ahead. I don't blame you. I'll be watching at least the main event, but shoot, I'm not even excited about the fight companion after this news. So with that being said, it's unfortunate, but let the full-time family know what you think in the comments. Robert Whittaker's out at UFC 234 in the main event. And one thing I did think about, but it was already shut down, there's a middleweight main event and a middleweight co-main event. You know what I think would be a great fight that could save this card? Robert Whittaker, since he's out of the picture. We got Kelvin Gastelum, who was ready to fight. Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya versus Kelvin Gastelum for an interim title. We already said that if Adesanya wins this fight, he's probably going to get the next title shot. That was 100% an easy move I think the UFC could have made. If Adesanya is going to get a title shot next, anyways, if the winner of this fight gets a title shot, then just give it to, people are just picking him to slaughter Anderson Silva. So boom, Adesanya versus Gastelum, interim title, winner fights Whittaker. I don't see how that doesn't make perfect sense, but it wasn't discussed. Aaron Bronstetter reported, he said, no discussion to keep Kelvin Gastelum on the card. Ali would like to see Kelvin face the winner of Adesanya and Silva in April. Despite that, Ali feels it's terrible for Robert Whittaker, wishes him a speedy recovery. Robert Whittaker, of course, suffering from a hernia. So I don't know why Gastelum versus Adesanya couldn't have took place now, but that's unfortunate. I think that would have made perfect sense. Gastelum, Adesanya, interim title, winner fights Whittaker. It would have sucked for Silva, but who's really looking forward to seeing Silva potentially face his demise at the hands of the younger version? Now, if Silva gets a knockout, okay, that's awesome. If he pulls off some crazy upset, but as of right now, instead of just watching Adesanya slaughter Silva, which a lot of people think is going to happen, it's not necessarily the case, but instead of watching that fight that everyone's picking, one guy to win, how about, boom, I think it would have been perfect. Adesanya, Gastelum, interim title. Let me know what you think about that in the comments, but hey, it is what it is. We'll still be watching Anderson Silva versus Adesanya tonight. Let the full-time penalty know what you think in the comments. I'm out.
Bye, Felicia.